Here's Bobby!
Yeah.
Woo!
I think I'll sit down also. Strange being the oldest one here. Anyway, I grew up in Crown Heights on Montgomery Street in the 50s and 60s. And Crown Heights in the 50s and 60s was basically populated by, let's see, 80% Jews, Italians, some Irish, some Asians. But basically it was 80% Jews. And those Jews were all refugees. They were refugees from the Second World War. They were all survivors of the Holocaust. My mother included. These people had no clue of the American life. They had no idea about major appliances. They had no idea about plumbing. They had no idea about anything. Getting into this because the only person who knew about how to help us, who knew how to fix things on the block, was a guy, and his name was Jimmy. He was a fix-it man, and I don't mean to be derogatory now, but he was a black guy, and he's African American, but to all of us, in our vernacular, he was known as Jimmy the Schwarzer, right? Now, Jimmy knew how to fix everything. Jimmy would, if something was broken, I'll give you a for instance. My mother comes down one day and she looks at me and she says, I'm on the street, she goes, have you seen Jimmy? And everyone had an accent, by the way. Have you seen Jimmy? And I said, no, I haven't seen Jimmy. And she goes, well, no. Then all of a sudden, Jimmy just appears. And she goes, oh, Jimmy, do me a favor. Come here for one minute. Jimmy, let me ask you that. Jimmy, the toilet in the bathroom toilet in the bathroom is not working. Can you come and take a look? Years later, she would always say this, the bathroom toilet in the bathroom. And I always said to myself, what the fuck, is there a bathroom in the dinette? I mean, is that dinette? Anyway, Jimmy would come upstairs and he would look at it. He would go inside the bathroom, he'd come, whatever, and he'd look around, make a little bit of noise, come out and he goes, Mrs. Sutton, it's going to cost you $12 and you'll need a $5 part. Fine. He goes downstairs, he comes up with a 3-ton toolbox. I can see the toolbox and I can't see the $5 part. This was the whole thing. Everything you needed to have done in your house cost $12. But, Jimmy would ask for $12 plus a $5 part. Right? So he goes into the bathroom. I'm a little kid. I go in there because I'm really curious. I look and he's going with the wrench and all this shit. And I'm just looking at this guy, he's getting greasy, he's getting a little wet. And after a few minutes, I just get bored shit of this stuff and I leave, right? He comes out of the bathroom after a while and he goes, oh, it's almost done, but you'll need another $5 part, right? Now, rent for us back then was like $45. Here it's $12 plus another $5 part. Anyway, he goes out, he comes back, and he goes in there and he fixes the toilet and comes back out and it's done. It's a true story. Maybe a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, I'm downstairs, right? Mrs. Gordon, who lived downstairs from us, comes outside. She looks at me. She had a different accent. She had a real Yiddish Jewish accent. And she said, Bobby, have you seen Jimmy? And I went, no, I haven't seen Jimmy. And all of a sudden, Jimmy appears. And I go, Jimmy, can they have Jimmy? And Jimmy, goes, yes, goes. And she goes, Jimmy, the kitchen sink in the kitchen is not working. Right? And I'm looking, and I said, okay, fine. And he goes up and he does this $12 thing. Now, the interesting thing about this story was every Jew in Crown Heights who was a survivor, who had no clue about American culture, let alone about American and these appliances, always thought that it cost $12 and $5 for the first time around and $5 for another part. And I just remember this. Last week, my mother now lives in Queens. Her basement was flooded, right? And I had to run over there. I had to go to Home Depot and get a carpet dryer, whatever, because there's carpet in her basement. And she actually said to me, and I said, how much are you paying for this? She goes, well, the plumber's coming, it's going to cost $200, $250. And I said, oh, God. She said, if only Jimmy were here. Right? This is 60, 50-something years later. She thought that Jimmy could fix it for $12 on $5. Right? So that's one story I have in Brooklyn. The next thing was I went to a Jewish parochial school, yeshiva. And this also was in the 50s and 60s, and this was a lunatic asylum. Basically, in yeshiva, it's unlike Catholic public school, but it's probably similar. It's probably similar to public schools back then. In yeshiva, there were in each grade, fourth grade, let's say, where I was in at that time for this story, there were four classes. So there was the A class, the B class, the C class, and the D class. The A class was for absolutely brilliant kids. The B class was for bright kids and kids whose parents had some money. The C class was for the extremely mediocre, right? And the D class was basically for catatonics, cretins, and kids who have around too much sugar. Right? And I always fluctuated between the C and the D class. Anyway, if you were in the D class, you were stigmatized because it was known as the dumb class. And in class also, so in class there are 5 rows and 5 desks to each row. So every week, the person in the first row on Friday would know that he or she has to go into the back row, right, for the next week, and that would rotate over the year. I knew that I was going to go to the back row that week, and if you were in the back seat on Monday, you collected homework. So I had devised a plan. We'll hear about it in a minute, whereby I knew that I was going to be in that back seat in that row on Monday. I'm not going to do my fucking homework, right? I'm going to steal somebody's homework, erase the name, and hand it in. So what happened is that Monday comes along, I'm in the back row, right? Whenever it was, 20, 30 minutes into the day, the teacher goes, okay, the back person in the row, please collect homework. This was Hebrew classes, by the way. So they were speaking Hebrew, and it was Hebrew homework. So everything was written in Hebrew. I get up, I collect all the homework for the 5 or 6 kids. I go back and I erase the top name, the top homework, and I put in my name, right? Ephraim Sutton. My Hebrew name is Ephraim. And I hand it in to the teacher. Before I can get back to my desk, she says, Ephraim. I go up and I go, what? I go up there, she goes, this isn't your homework. And I go, yeah, it is, of course it is. Somebody else did this, and somebody else didn't do their homework. And then she goes, look at this, right? So I look, and it was the homework of a girl named Leslie Tawil. She had this beautiful girl penmanship, right? I had written Ephraim Sutton like a caveman. So anyway, I was busted, right? She told me to go to the assistant principal's office. And she also, this guy in my class was acting out at the same time, Frank. She says, you two, go to the guy, not him. She says, go to the assistant principal's office. We go to the assistant principal's office. Now, remember, I'm in the C class and, C class or D class, so you're catatonic or, you're dumb, whatever. I go down there, and the assistant principal comes in. Now, mind you, this is 1962, right? The assistant principal, Mr. Feldman, he was just off the boat also. He was a refugee, but he looked exactly like Adolf Eichmann, right? He had the shaved head, the little glasses, and all this shit. Anyway, so he says, I want to have your parents' phone numbers, right? Frank goes, so he leaves. Frank turns to me and goes, don't give me your real phone number. And I look at him and I go, what are you, out of your mind? See, this is the C and the D class. So what I did was, I gave my phone number. I got into trouble, obviously. She called up my mother. I got into trouble. A couple of days later, I have to go from one building to the next building at school, and I'm going through a schoolyard. There is, I'm going down, and there is Mr. Feldman, Mar Feldman, Adolf Eichmann coming the other way, right? He stops right in front of me, and he turns to me, and he goes, Sutton, you're a professional liar. Right? And I'm in like 3rd grade. This is the educational system I'm growing up with. So at that point in time, I say, you know what? I'm stigmatized by being in the dumb class. I'm dumb now. Now I'm a professional liar. So I had to live with that a lot of my life. The third story I want to tell you about is also basically, in 1961 or 62, I was 11 years old, and there was this one record album that I wanted badly, and it was called My Son the Folk Singer. And it was written by this guy named Alan Sherman. Some of you might remember a song from that. I don't know if some will remember. I might have heard it. Called Hello Mother, Hello Father. Here I am. Anyway, I had heard the song on the radio. I had heard the song on, a couple of people had it on the block, whatever. I wanted this fucking album. I had I couldn't afford the album, so I thought the best thing to do was just shoplift it, steal it. So I had to devise a plan. I devised what I thought at the beginning was a brilliant plan, right? Now, I'm in, what am I, 11 years old, I'm like this big, and I weigh maybe 85 pounds, right? And I'm really thin. And I go downstairs to my neighbor, my friend Larry, and say, Larry, give me one of your father's old attaché cases. Larry goes, gets me the attaché case, and he doesn't even ask why. Right? C class, D class shit. And I had to figure out what day is the best day to steal the record. I couldn't do it during the week because school was from like 8 in the morning to like 5 at night. Really it was. And Sunday, the store was closed. By the way, this store was A&S, Abraham and Strauss. It was on Fulton Street, which is now the Fulton Mall, which is now, and A&S is now Macy's, right? So I had to pick a good day. I picked Friday because Friday they let us out early because the next day was Shabbos, the Jewish Sabbath, so people had to prepare for shit. I don't know what they prepared for, but they prepared to let us out early. Anyway, they let us out early. Now mind you, in yeshiva, yeah, there was a dress code. So I'm in a white shirt, a tie, I have dark pants on, probably dark shoes, and I'm carrying an attaché case. And I'm carrying this attaché case. And I went to school that day with the books in my attaché case. Then school is over, and I remembered that I told these guys in the schoolyard that, at school, that I had a Polaroid camera, right? And I had this Polaroid camera, and they said, you have a Polaroid camera, bring it in on Monday. And I had no Polaroid camera. So I said, you know what, I'll bring in some Polaroid film, because my mother's not going to allow me to bring in the camera. Whatever. So anyway, what I did was on Friday, I took the 3 train to Hoyt Street, got off at Hoyt Street, because the Fulton Mall was the Fulton Mall. Fulton Street was a block away. My first trip was to the camera store. I went to steal Polaroid film. I went to a camera store, and I went up to a guy. He goes, "Where do you keep where's the Polaroid film?" And he went behind the counter. So it was behind the counter, and I knew, Christ, this is not stealable. And I got pissed. So I start walking out the store, and as I'm getting out the store, I notice there's a display with Kodak film, the Tri-X, Pan-X, whatever, the little yellow boxes. And I grabbed one. And I ran out the store, ran down the block, and when I knew I was safe, I put it in my attaché case. So now I walk into A&S. I'm 4'10". I may weigh 85 pounds. I take off my yarmulke, by the way, because I didn't want to be conspicuous. Right? I'm wearing this shirt with the tie with black pants with this attaché case, and I look like a midget accountant. And the record department was on the 7th or 8th floor. I can't remember. So I take the elevator up to the 7th or 8th floor, and I go to the records. And now these are albums, so they're in rows and stuff like that. So the guy who wrote this album. Sorry, my son folk singer is a man named Alan Sherman. So I went immediately to the A's. I'm looking through Alan, right? I have no fucking idea. I'm looking for Alan. Hence, obviously, the C and the D class. Okay? And I can't find the thing. Then I realized it's S under Sherman. I go to Sherman, and I look, and I get his album. I take it out. I look at it, I inspect it, and then I get down on my knee and I start tying my shoe with the attaché cases, and I slip it into the attaché case. I get up, and I don't take the elevator down because that's going to take too long. So what I did was I took the escalator as much as I could, right down the goddamn escalator. I see the exit. I'm about to exit A&S, and all of a sudden I get to the exit, and boom, there's this mountain of a man. Right in front of me, this black man, and I'm scared shitless. He sticks a badge in my face, and he goes, "Come with me, son." And I went, "Fuck," fuck, I didn't know the word, and he takes me through all this, whatever, in some back office there in A&S, sits me down, and he says, "Wait here." He comes back out with a pad. He opens my attaché case up. He goes, "What's this?" And he has the film. Right? "Oh, I bought that there." And then he goes, "And I suppose you bought this somewhere." And I said, and I started crying. "Please don't tell my mother. Please don't tell my mother. Please don't tell my mother. She was in Auschwitz." I would do anything to get out of this. He goes back, and then he goes, "Stand up against the wall." I'm scared to death. He takes a ruler. And it's like he's measuring my height. I'm scared to death. It probably was the greatest fear I've had before and since. right? And I'm crying. He sits me down again, and he goes out. Another guy comes in, they're writing on a pad, and then he looks at me, and he says, Robert, don't you ever steal again, and don't come into A&S. You can go. And I went downstairs. It was almost, sundown or something. I called my mother. I told her something like the trains broken down or something. And I got home, whatever. Anyway, 30 years later, someone gives me a certificate to A&S. So I walk into A&S, Abraham and Strauss, and I'm standing there. It's probably mid-'80s, I guess. And I'm standing there. And all of a sudden I walk in, how am I going to spend this $50 gift certificate? And I stop dead in my tracks, right? We're expecting the guy to be there. The guy wasn't there. I stopped dead in my tracks, and I realized it's the first time I hadn't been in A&S since I got busted that day at the age of 9 or 10. So this guy actually, I might have shoplifted here and there since then. So the tie into all these stories is the fact that in Brooklyn, there's punch ball, there's stick ball, there's slap ball, there's all these street games, there's Scully, that was the thing with bottle caps, by the way, which is great. There's Chinese handball, no offense, but there's a thing called Chinese handball. And Brooklyn is that, but Brooklyn also, within its DNA, it's, within my DNA with Brooklyn, however you want to put it, is the concept of getting over, beating the system. And that's what these two things, that's what beating the system. I couldn't do it as a forger. I couldn't do it as a thief. And the only one who got away with it was Jimmy, because he just gave $5 parts, $5, and no one ever saw the part. So that's basically my story about Brooklyn, and I love Brooklyn. I love growing up in Crown Heights. It's now changing again. I mean, it went through 6 or 7 iterations since 1950 something. I remember Ebbets Field. I remember them tearing it down. But those are memories. The new Brooklyn is pretty good too. So I want to thank you, and for all of you transplants, have a great time.